Rabbi Yossi, welcome to the Bondi Podcast.
Thanks, Chris. Great to be on.
Look, we're recording this episode outdoors today. We're recording it in Archer Park in Bondi Beach, 10 days after that terrorist attack actually took place in this park. And for those, watching on video, they'll actually see the bridge over your right shoulder.
Yeah.
How does it feel sitting here today, 10 days after that attack took place?
Yeah, honestly, it still feels like a dream. It still feels like just a nightmare that I can't really fathom. Bondi's always been such a wonderful, happy, safe space for everyone, for us locals, for people who come here from, over wherever they come from, Australia, overseas, and just to even think that this thing could happen at all, let alone here, it's just unthinkable, really. So I still think coming to terms somewhat with what happened, and I think going to the funerals last week especially was a bit of a reality check. Like it's not a dream. Grieving families, children crying over lost parents, and and as a rabbi, doing my best just to try and support them and everyone who's coming through here through the memorial. So it's been just an utterly mentally exhausting and draining 10 days for our entire community, still reeling from the attacks.
So you've touched on it a little bit there, Yossi.
Yeah.
As a rabbi in the local community, what have the last 10 days actually looked like for you?
Well, for me, it's looked like we're trying to spend every minute of every day at the Bondi Memorial. So people have there's been an outpouring of love and support from the Jewish community, from the broader community. People have just been uniting together as one. Because I think in truth, it's been an attack. Yes, they targeted Jews for celebrating here at Chanukah by the Sea, a family event, a festival of light. But it's an affront, and it was an attack against our Australian way of life, which is all about freedom for all and inclusivity and diversity and a place of peace. It was really an attack against all of us. Darkness does not discriminate, and Jews and non-Jews were killed in this attack. And I've been reading out the list of 15 names of the Jews and non-Jews who were impacted and murdered and injured. So it was really an attack against all of us. And every minute of every day, just trying to be at the memorial to read out the names and share a little story of one of the victims on the hour so people can take something away to empower them with a real story of one of the victims, because they were all the best of us. They were all beacons of light. They lived their lives as selfless, beloved family members of their community, and they were taken from us way too soon. I mean, the only breaks that I had was actually leaving here and running to funerals. So it was here and then off to funerals. I think I've attended about 7 funerals over the past week. And now that things have quietened down here a little bit, I'm going to start visiting the injured in the hospitals.
Going through something like that, Yossi, how does that take its toll on you? That must be pretty heavy, attending, 7 funerals in the space of a week.
Yeah. It's I don't know. Yeah. Kind of where I think we're living off love and light right now. And, people have asked me, Yossi, how are you doing it? And I think for me, it's being around other people. Like I would not trust myself to be at home right now by myself. So I really need and want to be around others. And I think, we're holding each other up. And even at the funerals, we're holding each other up and somehow getting through this, because we know we have to. There's no other choice. We can't let the darkness win and defeat us. And we just know we have to, and we will get through this.
You mentioned there that you've been going to the memorial, which is probably about 100 meters that way.
Yeah.
Every day and reading out the names. What's important about reading out the names?
So reading the names, I think gives the human side. They're not just lumped together as a collective, the victims.
Yeah.
But rather it's each person was a light. Each person had their own name and their own story and their unique contribution to their family, to their community. And there are lessons that we can learn. So I think it humanizes the situation that people will come. I mean, thousands of people have been streaming through here. Many of them didn't know the victims or the community. I met a couple who had flown in from Manila. I said to them, wow, it's so amazing that you're here. And who did you know? They said, we actually didn't know anyone. We're just here because we want to show our solidarity with Bondi, with the Jewish community, with the local community. And so they flew in just to be here. And they're not isolated. That's not an isolated story. I've met so many who have come from all over Sydney, all over Australia and the world to show their solidarity without them actually having personally known anyone impacted. And I think that is the strength and the beauty of what we're seeing kind of come out of this tragedy. It's the humanity.
Yeah.
It's the beautiful humanity. This is the real Australia that has always been there, but sadly, sometimes it takes a tragedy to bring it out. But that's kind of my mission now. It's to keep that humanity going, and to keep that wonderful family, close community feel alive. That we're in this together. We're one humanity. It doesn't matter what faith we're part of or what background, the color of our skin. What matters is that we're human and that we're in this together.
Just a quick word from me, guys, and please don't skip over this. Do you want a free coffee from me? We're making some really good progress on Spotify and YouTube. I've set myself a goal of having 1,000 followers on Spotify and 1,000 subscribers on YouTube by the end of 2025. So here's what I need you to do. I need you to pause this episode right now, jump into your Spotify app, click that follow button, then jump into your YouTube app, click that subscribe button. It really, really helps with the show, and it would mean an awful lot to me. And as a thank you to everyone that does that, here's what I'm proposing. If you see me out and about in person, and you can show me on your phone that you are subscribed to the podcast on YouTube and following it on Spotify, I'll buy you a coffee. Can't say fairer than that. But here's the thing. You've got to be subscribed on YouTube and following it on Spotify to qualify for that free coffee. How does that sound? Cheers. I think that's a really valid point, Yossi. I think when something terrible like this happens and there are multiple wounded, multiple injured, multiple deaths, it's very easy just to lump it all together, the 15 victims, for example. But I think, these are all 15 individuals with their own story, their own families, their own personalities, and sometimes that gets lost in all the noise. Yossi, look, I want to talk a little bit about the festival first, just to give the incident a little bit of context. So it was a Hanukkah festival. For those maybe listening who are not familiar with Jewish tradition, what is Hanukkah and why is it important to people of Jewish faith?
Yeah, well, Hanukkah is one of those incredible Jewish festivals of resilience, actually. It goes back about 2,300 years old to the second temple that's stood in Jerusalem. And when the Jews were ousted from their homeland, from the temple worship, by the ancient Seleucid Greek nation and armies, and there was a small fighting force called the Maccabees, small, proud Jews, only a few hundred strong, right? And they were literally had a death wish. They said, we're not going to give up our values and who we are. We're going to go against the mightiest army of the day. We're going to go back to Jerusalem and retake our temple and reclaim our homeland. And there was no way they were going to win, a few hundred, but they were ignited with this passion, with a love for who they were and for their people. And they went, and miracle of miracles, they won. And they ousted the enemy out of the temple. They went back to restore the temple worship again. And the highlight of the temple worship was the kindling of the menorah, which was the 7-branched candelabra that stood in the temple, which was a symbol of light. And every day the high priest, would light those candles. And the light would then exude, it would shine out, not just to Jerusalem and Israel, but indeed to the world. And blessings for all the nations of the world would come out from that temple worship. And problem was that they couldn't find, the whole temple had been defiled and broken and torn down. And they needed a pure jug of oil. They needed one jug of oil to light the candelabra to restore the temple worship. And they couldn't find one. They were searching and searching and searching, which is another miracle. That they didn't give up. They kept searching, and eventually they found in a crack in the floor somewhere one little flask. And there was only enough oil in that flask to last for one day. But the service would have taken a lot longer, but they said, you know what, at least we have one flask. And they lit that one flask. And then there was a divine miracle that the laws of nature were suspended. That oil that was supposed to last one day ended up lasting all 8 days, which they needed to rededicate the temple and then produce new oil. So that's why we have now an 8-branched candelabra or menorah, which symbolizes the miracle of the 8 days of light. So this festival stands for light, which is really the Jewish mission. The Jewish mission, if you were to sum it up, it's to bring light to the world. And we always, in Australia, it's beautiful, it's warm weather, it's light anyway, but we always, we always end off the year with lighting candles and reminding ourselves of our mission statement, which is to always bring light into the world, whether it be a kind phone call to a neighbor or, try and bring peace between two people that haven't spoken in a while. Think of a good deed that you can do this time of the year and be the light. Go and bring that good into existence. So that's how we end off the year and recharge ourselves for the year ahead. This is what Chanukah is. We light candles every night. We think about light. We pray for peace. We pray for love, not just for ourselves, but indeed for all of humanity. And that was what this celebration was all about. It's about bringing families together to celebrate Chanukah, to light the candles. Jews, non-Jews, everyone's invited to attend this. It's an open event for all, and to end off the year on a high with light. And sadly, what we saw were the forces of darkness came to try and prevent that light from even being kindled at all. Even the first night, they tried to prevent it.
So the festival that was taking place in this park, just down there.
Right where we're sitting.
Yeah,
right
where we're sitting.
Was inside the fence.
Yeah.
And in direct line of the shooters.
Yeah. So that was the festival itself. That was day one of Hanukkah. That was sort of the...
Well, that was about to usher in the festival.
Okay.
So Sunday night was when we were going to light. Yeah, that was the first night of Hanukkah, and the first day would be the following day.
Okay. And then it's 7 or 8 days?
Then it's 8 days following that.
Okay, cool.
Yeah.
Cool. And it's interesting. On the day itself, myself and my girlfriend, we got very lucky. We were sitting on the beach about 6:30. We needed to go to Woolworths. We walked through the park, past the festival, past the bridge, probably about 3 or 4 minutes before the shooters were on the bridge and opened fire. We were in Woolworths by the time the shooting had started. But it was interesting. As I walked past the festival, I noticed the candelabra. I noticed the Jewish community in there, people wearing yarmulkes.
Yeah.
One of the things I did notice was the families.
Yeah.
I noticed the young, old, kids, elderly, mums, dads. And that's one thing, as I walked past, I did, that really, really stood out to me.
Yeah.
Given the world we live in at the minute, the other thought I had when I saw the security guards standing at the perimeter of the festival, the security guards that the Jewish community use, what are they, CSG?
CSG, yeah.
And it struck me, I was like, why do we, I know the answer now, but like, why do the Jewish community in Sydney need these security guards to be present at a festival like this? And then my mindset initially went to, I'm actually surprised there's not some sort of protest at the other side of the park protesting the Jewish Hanukkah festival that's going on at the other side.
Yeah. And
it is a real sad state of affairs that my mind went there, I suppose, because I think one thing we've seen in Bondi over the last 2 years is any time there is there's been a lot of protests on both sides, the Israel and pro-Palestine thing. Anytime there's a pro-Palestine festival on the beach, you usually see the other side, the Israeli side come out, and vice versa. When the Israelis or the Jewish people do anything, the pro-Palestine people come out and they just protest in the same area. And I'm not necessarily taking a side, but I was initially surprised that one, they needed that level of security, but then a few minutes later, it all kind of made sense. So again, as a white person living in Bondi who's not religious, I was nearly a bit oblivious to the level of anti-Semitism within Australia toward the Jewish community.
Yeah.
I understand now. Why do you think this attack took place? What was the motivations of these two individuals on the bridge?
Yeah. There's a lot to say on this. And the Jewish community have really been living in fear for the past 2 years. The writing was on the wall, and we've been telling our leaders about the fears that the Jewish community have. The fact, as you mentioned, that why do we need to have security outside our schools and our synagogues? These are supposed to be safe places. But we take our kids to school, and they don't even blink an eyelid anymore. It's just normal. There are armed guards standing in front of the school, questioning people as they come in. It's just part of the process. But it shouldn't be that way. You should take your kids to school. It should be safe. You should go to synagogue and pray, and it should be safe. But that's how we've been living the past many years, actually, but especially the past 2 years since October 7 happened. October 7 was the biggest tragedy since the Holocaust that we've seen, where armed gunmen went into southern Israel and attacked families in their homes, pillaging, raping, butchering. I've now been twice down to the communities of the South, and I personally visited those communities. I've spoken to the families. I've had family myself impacted by those events, but it's impacted all over the world, and the whole pro-Palestine movement has just ballooned and has really, again, it's become, those protests really, they're breeding grounds of hate. And, chants like globalize the Intifada. 2 days after October 7 happened, before Israel even responded, there was no response from Israel at all at that stage. And already there were thousands of people at the Opera House chanting, "Where are the Jews?" "Gas the Jews," burning the Israeli and Australian flags. Already the hatred was coming out there. And we saw the police didn't do anything at that gathering. And that was the first major trauma after October 7 that the Jewish community experienced. That was supposed to be a night of solidarity with the Jewish community and with Israel, Australia's ally, democracy, the only democracy in that area in the Middle East. And Australia was put blue and white on the sails of the Opera House. But on a day that should have been solidarity with the Jewish community, where many of us would like to have gone to the Opera House to actually witness that beautiful act of recognition, instead it was turned into a day of trauma where Jews were actually told, don't go there for your own safety.
So just to get that straight, Yossi, as a sign of solidarity with what happened in Israel on October 7.
Where 1,200 Jews were murdered and 240 were taken hostage. Yeah.
The New South Wales government decided to project onto the Opera House blue and white, the colour of the Israeli flag, in solidarity with Israel.
Yeah.
On that day, a group of pro-Palestine protesters surrounded the Opera House and were saying some of the things.
We're allowed to go and call out chants, globalize the Intifada, which now the Premier is trying to outlaw that phrase. It basically means kill Jews. Intifada, referring to uprisings against Jews where Jews were killed throughout the ages. And so he's trying to get that outlawed, make that hate speech, which is correct. But again, those phrases and others at these protests, radicalize our youth. We've seen encampments at universities as well, which again are radicalizing our students. And I guess inaction. There's been a lot of speech over the past 2 years from our government and from leaders, but not a lot of action to make the Jewish community feel safe. And I mean, earlier this year and at the end of last year, it was almost on a weekly basis that there was another attack against our community, whether it be slurs hurled out from passing vehicles, which I've personally witnessed and experienced. Many others have witnessed that as well, whether it be graffiti being scrawled upon our homes or our synagogues, swastikas being scrawled. So again, the writing was literally on the wall. The graffiti, the hate was there. And then the firebombings of synagogues, of Jewish-owned childcare centers. And we always knew that, what's the next step? If this hate goes unchecked and is allowed to keep breeding and growing, there will be bloodshed.
Why didn't the police do more in and around that day of the Opera House when there was the pro-Palestine protests and they were saying some of these things?
Well, these are the questions that we have. Why were the police not given the powers or instructed to not allow a hate-filled protest to go ahead? I'd love to know the answer to that question.
Do you have an opinion?
Well, I think a lot of these gatherings are put forward as human rights and they're dressed up as social justice, whereas that's not the case. And so, under the right of having the freedom to speech, a lot of these protests are allowed to go ahead. But again, I think our government needs to tighten the laws on protests, and hate preachers getting up in their communities and preaching hate, and actually put laws down to enforce that, yes, freedom of speech is an important quality that we must all have, but not when it actually incites hatred and incites violence. That's where it crosses a line. And so that's what we need to see more of. So yeah, the Jewish community have been scared because of the rising hatred that we've been seeing. But there's been an 800% increase in anti-Semitic attacks since October 7. And we've had to all bolster our security since then. And then Sunday happened, which confirmed our worst fears. We were all shocked, but sadly weren't surprised because, the writing was on the wall.
Are you a small business or solo entrepreneur who wishes you had more hours in the day? Have you ever thought about hiring a virtual assistant? Well, the Bondi Podcast is sponsored by Remote-E. Remote-E specialise in connecting small businesses and entrepreneurs with the best virtual assistant talent in the Philippines to do all those jobs that you don't want to, so you can focus on growing and scaling your business. If this is something you're interested in, the Bondi Podcast can get you 2 weeks absolutely free with Remote-E. Just go to the website, remote.com.au/contact and enter the referral code Bondi for 2 weeks absolutely free. That's 2 weeks absolutely free. Cheers. Where does a lot of that anti-Semitism come from in Australia?
Yeah.
Where does it stem back? I don't understand.
That's an age-old question.
Where does it stem back to? I don't know.
Yeah. Why is there anti-Semitism? Why is there hatred at all, really? And, I think often...
Religion and politics, usually.
Often the Jews are an easy target because we're often a minority in the lands in which we live, in the countries that we reside. And it's almost the age-old story. When things don't go well, then we need to find someone to scapegoat, someone to blame. And so often the Jews are the victim of that. But also, Jews have come to this country after the Holocaust. A lot of the Jewish community are Holocaust survivors. We actually had a group yesterday from the Sydney Jewish Museum. It was incredible. 20 Holocaust survivors who on a daily basis speak to thousands of students, educating them on the outcomes of hate, where hate actually leads, and their personal witnesses, and they've experienced the horrors of the Holocaust. So I led a group yesterday, which was beautiful, but my own grandparents are survivors of the Holocaust. My wife's grandparents, her grandmother was in Auschwitz, has the number tattooed in her arm. So a lot of the Jewish community actually came here escaping those horrors and seeking a better life. But they entrenched themselves in the community. They didn't just stand back, and they weren't just silent, passive observers. They sought to better the country in which they lived. And, getting back to what I said earlier about the mission statement, which is to bring light and to immerse oneself into the host culture. And so we became fully fledged Australians and locals, and we're proud and upstanding members of our Jewish community and our Jewish values. But we equally are upstanding members of our Australian community. We have Sir John Monash, Australia's finest and decorated soldier. He was Jewish. Sir Isaac Isaacs, Governor General of Australia. He was Jewish. And there are countless others. Jess Fox, Olympian. So Jews excel in so many fields because we immerse ourselves into the culture and we try our very best. And a lot of us have survivor mentality that we have to appreciate every moment of life and give it our all. And so perhaps because Jews immerse themselves and they don't hide, and perhaps are successful in what they do because they really push themselves and try to be that light, maybe that makes us a target. But it's sad because no one should be a target. And hate in all of its ugly forms, anti-Semitism, but hatred against any minority needs to be stamped out. I think what we need to see is our leaders taking a zero tolerance policy towards hate of any kind. Anti-Semitism, Islamophobia, hatred against anyone needs to be extinguished. And if the government won't do it, then it has to come from us. It has to come from us as everyday Aussies banding together as one, like we've seen over the past week, and saying, we've had enough. And we're not going to accept this. We're going to build and co-create a better Australia together.
So one thing I'm still not clear on is what were the motivations of these two individuals on the bridge? What was their particular gripe with the Jewish community? What would they accuse the Jewish community of? Like what you've said to me there is about, what Jewish community sort of stands for is spreading light and love. What's their perspective on it? Like I still really, really struggle to understand what was the motivation of these two individuals on the bridge. What are they being told?
I'm struggling to even fathom how human beings can stoop to that level where, even animals don't just kill other animals for the sake of it. And how could they do that? Like willing to give up their own lives or spend the rest of their lives in prison just to kill others, murder others for their beliefs. It's just mind-boggling. I think it's a sickness. It must be some sort of like a like a sickness, an evil that just overtakes someone. They're so filled with hate that the hatred just can't be contained, and they have to just, even at their own expense, the hatred just explodes into what we saw. I don't really have any other explanation. It's just an all-consuming fire and hatred that just erupts.
Surprising thing to me is that it's spread into these borders.
Yeah.
I moved to Australia because it's a multicultural country. It's got good weather. It's got a great way of life. And I love living in Bondi in the eastern suburbs of Sydney, where it is so multicultural. But until recently, and some of the attacks on the Jewish community, I've not really seen a lot of hate or disagreement between different sides. I come from Northern Ireland, which is one of the, it is one of the most divisive countries in the world in terms of the civil wars we've had over the last 100 years between the Catholic side and the Protestant side, and Protestant side, and thousands of deaths. I wanted to get out of that.
Yeah.
I wanted to come to a multicultural society where everyone is accepted, everyone lives together in harmony. It doesn't matter what color your skin is, what religion you are, your political views, as long as we all live in harmony together and we can respectfully challenge each other, I don't mind.
Yeah.
So again, yeah, it is just hard to fathom how what happened and these views, these extremist views, landed on these shores, when I think the two gentlemen, it's reported that, I'll not refer to them as gentlemen, the two gunmen, I think it's reported that they had an ISIS flag on their car. So I think it's safe to assume that they are ISIS aligned. How do people I still don't really understand, how do people get radicalized? That seems like a Middle East problem.
Yeah.
Things that are going on between Hamas and Palestine and the Israeli government, that seems like a Middle East problem. How does that infiltrate the population here in Australia to the point where we had an event like that 10 days ago?
Well, that's getting back to what I said, is that we needed to have seen strong leadership from our government to ensure that the radicalization doesn't happen on our shores, and it has been happening on our shores, and to ensure that people don't come here into our country from overseas that import these ideologies and these radical beliefs, because that's what's been happening. And again, I think we as Australians have to say that actually it's not just a Middle East problem. It's actually a global problem, especially when these radicalizations are happening in our shores. And we have to say we've had enough. And as Jews, we've always felt that there has been a silent majority that has stood with us and does not want hate to be on our shores or anyone to be targeted. And we've always known that. And thankfully, the past week has shown us that they've actually become the vocal majority now. And we need that to stay. We need the vocal majority to be vocal and to say, we've had enough. We don't want any hatred here on our shores. We just want light. We just want, as you're saying, part of me being a rabbi and a spiritual leader, I believe in the same values. The Jewish values, our Australian values are aligned. It's about freedom. It's about peace. It's about human dignity and human life. These are the highest qualities that we have. And we're one humanity at the end of the day. We all have a soul that unites us, from which we stem with our Creator. And we're all one humanity. It doesn't matter if you're Jewish, if you're Christian, if you're Muslim, if you're Baha'i, if you're Sikh, if you're Hindu, whatever belief system, we are human first and foremost. And so we must unite and be strong and find our voices and be vocal and to say that we need to protect our minorities and everyone in Australia, because an attack against one is an attack against all of us. Like we've seen, this was an attack against Australia. And we must unite now and find our voices and keep our voices. It's not enough to be silent anymore, because silence, in the face of silence, hate is allowed, hate is tolerated, and it's allowed to breed, but no more.
Do you think the government were aware of people coming from overseas and radicalizing people in the local community?
100%, yeah. And that's why now many Jewish leaders and even non-Jewish leaders are calling for a royal commission to find out what happened with that information. The intelligence agencies warned a number of times that these sorts of events, that bloodshed might very well happen. What happened to the intel? Why was it not heeded? Why was not enough action and enforcement put in place to prevent tragedies like this taking place? So we are now demanding answers. we've had now a week. We're still grieving, I must say. We're still reeling from the incident, but hopefully soon in time, we will get answers to those questions. But that's what's the push now is to have a royal commission to find out what happened with that information.
Yeah. It must be frustrating when you hear things like, oh, the two men were known to us.
Yeah.
There was a level of supervision or surveillance on them, but then they both had licensed firearms. So you'd wonder how that can happen in the first place. Two men that are known to the authorities with potential affiliations to these entities overseas. How can they get licenses? How can they also, for a month or so, travel to Bondi, do dry runs, do test runs, be on the bridge, practicing where they might take aim? How can they also fly to the Philippines and take part in training camps without that going undetected as well? So it feels like there has been a failure somewhere along the line, as you say, with the intel. Could this have been avoided? Could the events of Sunday the 14th of December in this park, where 15 people lost their lives, could that have been avoided?
I believe it could have, yeah.
What needed to be done?
Well, I think from day one, I think straight after October 7, when that first hate-filled mob and protest took place at the Opera House, I think that was an opportunity to show leadership and to say, not on our shores, not here. And had we seen that? Had we seen the hate-filled protesters who were calling out actual hate language, globalize the Intifada, gas the Jews? Why were there no arrests made? Why was that mob not closed down? That could have been a strong moment of leadership and enforcement that would have given a strong message to anyone filled with hate that it will not be tolerated here in Australia. And yet it was not. And then from there, the incidents just began to increase particularly against the Jewish community.
So what do you think about the pro-Palestine march on the bridge that took place?
Well, there were ISIS flags there as well. You can see the images from there. There are ISIS flags. They were calling out slogans. They were under the guise of human rights. And I think a lot of people who came, there was a massive turnout.
Do you think the majority were there for human rights, and then there was a small minority who were there with those more extremist views?
I like to think that perhaps the majority would have thought it was for human rights and thought they were actually campaigning for a better world. But I don't believe that the minority or the organizers or whoever funded, which also would be a good question to answer, who actually funded that march? Who funds a lot of those activities? We already saw that, the Iranian regime was behind and paying for a number of the attacks against our community, against the Jewish community.
In Australia or
here in Australia?
Israel?
Yeah. Actually plotting terrorist attacks. The Iranian regime, yes.
Right. Tell me about that.
We're behind a number of the attacks, fire bombings, and actually funding a lot of the work happening on our university campuses.
So what's happening? I don't know what's happening on our university campuses. I'm a little bit naive.
Well, for instance, at Sydney University, earlier this year and end of last year, there was an encampment that was allowed to take place. Hundreds of tents were camped there with Palestinian flags all day and all night. And a lot of the people who were the organizers there weren't even Australian citizens. They were brought there to build this encampment and to radicalize students to the extent that Jewish university students felt unsafe. I did a little pop-up stall there. I have a little table. It's called I'm a Rabbi, Ask Me Anything. And I popped up there at the university. Ironically, I was asked to leave. The encampment was granted a permanent space there, and I was asked to leave because they were scared it would
incite some sort of incident.
It could incite something. As a rabbi, just coming and asking peaceful questions. So I went out to the street, which is a public space, and I sat there. And people came over to me and they told me stories of what they experienced in the university classes, where members of the encampment would come in, disrupt their lectures, try and force everyone to be in a photo with them with Palestinian flags in the middle of a lecture, interrupt the class to kind of show, look at our cause, look how many we have on our side. So that was taking place. There was another student who said to me that from her dorm room, in the middle of the night, she could hear the chants, she could hear the hatred, and she couldn't sleep at night. I had university lecturers who were actually scared to be on the camera, also tell me how they personally were threatened and felt scared for their own jobs, really, to lecture at the university. So, I mean, it's one thing to champion a cause and do it peacefully, but it's another thing to intimidate. I mean, that's how you know that it's filled with hate. It's when people are scared. And, that was taking place for a long time. It took so long for that encampment to be removed. And again, that was tolerated by the heads, the chancellors of the universities, by the government.
From a humanitarian perspective, they're thinking this is human rights and it's a humanitarian cause and stand, and we're going to let the students do this. Were they just a bit naive to who was potentially the organizers of these things and what they were actually, the message they were actually conveying to the volunteers and participants?
And just the fracture and the disunity that this was causing. I mean, it's causing disunity across our society. And I think that's a litmus test. Is it peaceful? Is it promoting unity and social cohesion and harmony and promoting the welfare of Australians? Or is it importing hate from overseas and actually causing a division in our society and the target of a minority group, in this case being Jewish Australians? And that has been the case all over the country. Jews have not felt safe. And that's what we need to see. May something good come out of this atrocity, this horrific Bondi attack, that it should be a turning point for us to say, no more hate, no more foreign conflicts coming onto our shores and causing division. We need to see unity, and we need just to see a movement, a revolution of light, where we come together as one humanity to just be there for each other.
What did you make of the response on the day when the shooters were on the bridge? They were firing bullets for approximately 9 minutes. What do you make of that police response on the day?
Yeah, it's a good question. I mean, there weren't enough police here, firstly. Secondly, is who would have even expected this to take place? I think everyone was just in shock. And thirdly, I don't know if the police who were here were adequately trained in taking out two gunmen with
long-range rifles,
and all they have is a pistol. We did see, there are police officers who were injured, and brave police officers who stood up against those gunmen. But I also have friends who were here who were saying 9 minutes is a long time, and they heard sirens, and no one was coming to their help. No one was coming to their assistance. So again, I actually just missed out being here. I was not here during the attack.
So were you here?
I drove here 15 minutes before it started. I drove through the area at 6:30. I was driving through. I was looking for a car spot to park my car and actually to come here. So I've come here for many years. And I looked at my watch. I was delayed from a previous event that I was at. I thought, you know what? I'm actually running a bit too late. I better join my family up at the next event up the hill. And so I found a spot. I'm like, no, I'm actually not going to park. I'm just going to keep going. So I missed it by 10 minutes. I very likely, had I not been running late from my other event, I may very well have been here. So it's quite chilling. But then I just got to the event in Dover Heights when it was put into lockdown, and we didn't know what was happening. After about 5 minutes, we were all hitting the floor, and people were escaping down the sides of Dudley Page Reserve. And suddenly reports started to filter through that there's a shooting, there's something happening at Bondi. We didn't quite know. And that's when I knew something bad was happening. Something really bad was going down. And so that was my experience on the day. And then slowly we started to see what was happening. My sister-in-law, my wife's sister, was actually here with her 3 children. They were fortunate to flee, and they jumped over a fence. And there's been a lot of heroism from the locals here who opened up their apartments and took people in. We saw a really united community, and lots of heroes were here. And they were seeking shelter, refuge in one of the apartment buildings just behind me. But I lost friends. The 2 rabbis who were here were dear colleagues and friends of mine, and other community members. The Jewish community is not a big community. People think that there are, I've heard lots of numbers as to the size of our community thrown around to the media over the past week. But there's only just over 100,000 Jews in all of Australia. And in New South Wales, perhaps just under 50,000. But it's a close-knit community. And everyone in the Jewish community knows someone who was here or impacted by the event. So it really hit home for all of us. We were all impacted. We're all feeling like we lost family members. We lost beloved community members. And it's gonna be a long road to recovery. And what really helps is when we are together and when our non-Jewish sisters and brothers who are our allies, and we've seen that and we know that, and we're together in this. And what really helps is when people come over to us and say, we see you, we're with you, we're crying alongside you, we give you a hug. So I think that could be really helpful perhaps in these days and weeks and months that follow. It's again to show that unity, that again, no minority, no people should be targeted for hate and for what they believe in.
Yeah, I agree. Bondi Podcast listeners, this episode is sponsored by Chief Nutrition. Chief Nutrition specialize in healthy, nutritious snacks that cut the crap. My personal favorite is the collagen protein bar, which I have every day. And good news, Bondi Podcast listeners get 10% off all Chief Nutrition products when they order online. And we've got a discount code for you right there in the show notes. So go and use that. Go and check out the website and let me know what you think. Cheers. I'm going to share with you what I saw, Yossi. So as I mentioned earlier, I walked past the bridge probably about 3 or 4 minutes before the shooters got onto the bridge. I know that because I've since timed the walk down from Woolworths to just there where the bridge is and along the path that we took. When we came out of Woolworths, we saw police cars racing down Curlew Street, parking at the junction of Curlew Street and Campbell Parade, where there is an entrance to the park just over there. And out of this police car, I saw multiple young police officers sprinting into the park. And as they were sprinting, they were putting bulletproof vests on. It's not like they were getting out of the car, checking, do I have my gun? I better get my vest on properly. Literally, as soon as they set foot out of the car, sprinting full pace into the park, probably not knowing what they're running straight into, putting bulletproof vest on. So one thing over the past week in the media, I think the New South Wales police have been getting it quite tight. I can only share my experience of what I saw young officers do. I've heard the Premier and I've heard the head of New South Wales Police talk about some of these police officers that had only started in the police probably 3 or 4 months ago. Yeah. And they're racing into heroes. Now, that's what I saw with my own eyes. I probably shared the same view as you. 9 minutes is far too long, particularly when the police station's only about 500 meters away. Yeah. So again, I'm not sure whether there's a failure there. I don't know whether there's a protocol that police have to follow in terms of how close they can get with the car and where they need to sort of sneak up on the attackers from. I'm not sure what the protocols are there. Yeah. But like you said, 9 minutes is a long time. I think my girlfriend counted the number of shots. It was sort of in the region of 95 to 100 bullets were fired in the space of that 9 minutes. Yeah. Some ways it's a miracle that only 15 people lost their lives. Yeah. The tree that's just there over your left shoulder, I mean, that's the tree where the gentleman...
Ahmed.
Yes. Yeah. He disarmed one of the shooters. But if you look at that tree, there are bullet holes in that tree.
Yeah. And if you look behind you as well, that I had friends hiding behind that kind of low concrete seating area. And if you look directly in that middle concrete piece, you'll see a dark area. That's a bullet hole in the concrete. I had friends hiding behind there with bullets whizzing over them. And, one of the victims, a non-Jewish man who was walking his dog just past here, was actually killed by a bullet.
A stray?
Adam Smythe, a stray bullet going past. But yeah, I mean, you also, the police have been absolutely incredible, and all the first, the New South Wales ambulance officers and all the responders and everyone who was here on the day and then following have been absolutely incredible in their ongoing support. I also know it's hard to judge as well, because getting back to the police officers, right? They're human and everyone responds the way they do in the face of crisis. I did have another friend who was here on the day and he saw a police officer just paralyzed.
With fear?
With fear. And he was yelling to the police officer, "Give me your gun. I'll go. I'll take them out. Just give me your gun." But they're paralyzed, just in fear. Again, I don't know if it's the training or it's just human response. Everyone responds differently in a crisis, and police are human beings. And but it's hard to know. It's hard to know exactly what happened or why it took 9 minutes. But again, what I've seen following this incident have just been an incredible response. Last night we had police officers from Mount Druitt who had come here to on shift and to show their solidarity, and they've come to a lot of the visual readings and ceremonies that I've been running, and so many people have been coming and showing the support, and nothing but respect to all the officers and first responders.
How do you think the Prime Minister and the Premier have responded to this event?
Well, I think that I've seen the Premier at every single funeral. Chris Minns has been present and with the Jewish community, taking responsibility as well, for perhaps not enough police officers being here on the day and protecting this community. But I think we need to see more from the Prime Minister as well, from the very top down, in terms of taking responsibility, in terms of answering the questions that we are now asking and giving us the full access to that information. Why was this hate allowed to reach these levels that it actually erupted the way that we saw? So I think we need to see a greater level of responsibility taking and to give us those answers.
You mentioned the Prime Minister there. You need to see more from him. Is there anyone else that you feel let down by, or you feel could be doing more post the event? Like, it's interesting how quickly this has turned into a political stoush. Like one side of the political spectrum here in Australia now using this event as a political tool to beat the other side with. And I think when that starts, it happens very quickly. And I think when that starts to happen, the human element gets lost very quickly.
That's right. So I've actually been steering away from trying to put blame. I think it's still too soon and it doesn't help at this point. Again, we have questions that we need answers to. But again, I'm still grieving and it's still, for me, too soon to start, conjuring and, different policies and politics. I don't want to get there yet.
Yeah. Where you've been in and around the community the last 10 days.
Yeah.
Where is the community, the Jewish and non-Jewish community, on the anger, grief, fear, sadness spectrum at the minute? Where's the consensus at the minute?
Well, I mean, everyone's experiencing their own like waves of emotions, right? Like even myself, I had lots of different emotions when it was just that first night was just pure shock. And then the following day is when I started to hear about who was murdered and some of the names that were flowing through and the injured. It was just grief and sadness and just a gaping hole in my heart. And then, day 2, day 3, anger, came in as well. Like, how the hell did it get to this? And who's responsible for this? And why? And, those feelings come across. And I think kind of like the waves of the ocean behind us, I think those different emotions come and go. And sometimes they're simultaneously at once. And sometimes there's one that prevails over the others. So I think still the Jewish community are grieving. There is now more anger as to why this was not prevented, why we'd been gaslit for the past 2 years and not taken seriously. So I think there is now a lot of those feelings are coming towards anger. But, I think the overarching thing is that, these are all normal human emotions. And again, we need those answers. So we have to make sure that, again, that at least from now onwards, that we have the enforcement and we have the policies put in place to ensure that hate could never erupt the way it did again. That never again actually is never again. So we need to actually see action and see those put into place. But again, I think we have to stay aligned to our mission, which is to be light. And I think the overarching messages from, the rallies that we saw, this incredible 20,000 people came on Sunday night to light the last candle of the candelabra. which was such a powerful message of unity, of solidarity, and also of the mission statement, which is to be light. And that no matter what darkness tries to prevent us, like the ancient miracle, the story of Chanukah 2,300 years ago in the second temple, they tried to prevent us from lighting the menorah. We came back and we're still going to light it. We're still going to be those beacons of light and share the names of the victims and their stories and be proud, upstanding members of our society. We're still going to do that. And we saw that on Sunday night. 20,000 people came to rally with us. And all the speeches, what were the speeches? The content. They weren't war cries. They weren't calls for vengeance and hatred and division. They were just calls for light and gratitude for what we do have and for this beautiful country that we're so blessed to all to live in. That was the theme of the night. And that is our overarching message. Not to be sidetracked. Yes, we need things put into place to ensure safety from a practical, physical level, but we have to always remain focused on our mission, which is to bring people together and to focus on that light.
Well said. I want to talk about fear. As someone who lives in Bondi and has done for 5 or 6 years now.
Yeah.
One of the things that I keep reflecting on is there going to be another attack? And there's been a very heavy police presence in Bondi for the last 10 days, as you would expect. You walk out the house, you see police officers at the end of your street, you hear helicopters overhead. Speaking with people like myself in the community, there still is a lot of fear that something could happen again.
Yeah.
You know, these two individuals probably aren't the only people within Australia who have got these thoughts and motivations. Is there any fear from your perspective or the Jewish community's perspective that another attack like this could be just around the corner?
That is a very real fear. Yes. Yes. Again, I think also what the police have said, it's kind of hard to sometimes track the movements of people who operate out of their own beliefs, not part of like a large movement. Yeah. And again, if there's easy access or even access to weapons or knives, anything can become an object of hate and can end lives. So I think there's a very real fear in the community that there could be copycats. There could be further tragedies that do take place. Can happen any place at any time.
Copycats is a big risk because the amount of media attention these two individuals have got over the past 10 days, there could be lone wolves sitting at home being like, oh, I want a bit of that. I want to be a martyr like that as well. So again, it's things like that scare me.
And there are segments in our community that I saw on social media, segments in our community that actually celebrated the attack. In Australia, in Sydney, segments that actually glorified it and saw it as a victory.
One of the weirdest things I saw post the events of Sunday the 14th, so on the Monday, the day after, there's a bagel shop at the end of my street, Lockstocks. Yeah. And it's a great bagel shop, but it's Jewish owned. And I saw on Instagram, the owner posted the very next day a screenshot of Google reviews that she'd received overnight, the night after the event. All people giving her 0 or 1 stars, all from, all really smashing the quality of the restaurant. It's a great restaurant. They do great bagels. But looking at the names, you can tell that they're probably, I want to say this gently, same religion as the two shooters, potentially, based on the names of the people leaving the reviews.
Yeah.
So it's just crazy that in the wake of such a devastating event that we had on the Sunday, people feel the need to target Jewish-owned small businesses in the area where Google reviews really mean something, right? So you got a barrage of 1 and 0 star reviews from people overnight just smashing the restaurant for absolutely no reason.
Yeah, again, and these are elements in our society again that need to be looked into. How do we have people who are siding with the gunman, and they're a real element of our society? I mean, I also was also overnight. And over the past week, I've also been getting on Instagram and in the socials, people sending me hate messages and Palestinian flags. And I'm not alone. A colleague came from Melbourne, a dear friend, a rabbi in Melbourne, showed me a message that he got on Instagram of someone saying, we're coming for you next and we're going to burn down your buildings. The message he got just after the attack.
I want to talk about the security on the day, Yossi. So, like you say, like living in and around the eastern suburbs of Sydney, outside a lot of the schools and the synagogues, you see the same security group, CSG, standing outside. Why did the Jewish community choose to use the security guards rather than utilize the police, for example?
Yeah. I think a few things. Number one is we've come to realize that we need to be self-reliant to some extent. We have to protect ourselves and be strong on our own feet. But also number two, a lot of these, and they're all volunteers, right? Young volunteers, 18, 19, 20, 21-year-olds who this is the way of kind of giving back to the community, standing outside to protect. They also know who's part of the community as well. They grew up in the community. So they're able to easily identify, oh, we know this person. Yep, they're safe to let in. Or this person perhaps looks suspicious. So because they're inside the community, they have a much better understanding as opposed to a group outside the community or the police force who may not know who's part of the community, is not part of the community. But really their role is to assist the police. And they work hand in hand with the police force, providing them intel and making the police force's lives easier, actually. So it's less of a burden on our police force, and that the police can actually go out and use their resources to protect, the broader community as well. So it's like a complementary service the Jewish community does to protect itself, to have those, the inner eyes and knowledge, but also to complement the police force.
So do they go through any sort of training?
They are trained. They are trained.
To what?
I'm not sure the extent of the training, and I probably can't share a lot of it either.
Yeah, okay.
But no, they are definitely trained in self-defense and in intelligence as well.
Okay. And so I'm just trying to imagine if, something major was going on outside a school or a synagogue, to what extent are these security guards standing at the perimeter or outside actually going to protect those in the building? Like, do they have that skill set to protect?
Yeah. Well, again, I think that the security group and the police and many others will have to be asking those questions now. If this is going to be, God forbid, a reality, I mean, if it happened once, it means it could happen again. And how are we going to upskill all of those in our security teams to be able to at least combat a horrific attack like that?
Because they're unarmed, aren't they? Yeah. That was one of the things I was sort of reflecting on. Again, as I walked past the festival on the day, I noticed the security guards on the perimeter on the bridge side. And I was unsure whether, once the shooters take their position on the bridge and are aiming down at the festival, to what extent can those security guards do anything to protect those in there? And it sounds like they weren't well equipped enough to be able to protect those within the festival. Were there any, and again, I didn't see any when I walked past, were there any New South Wales police present in and around the festival, like that had been arranged to be there just in case something like this happened?
There were a few. I'm not sure the exact number, but there weren't enough. I did hear the number 2 officers around. Again, I'm not sure exactly. I did hear that number, but obviously not enough. I mean, for an event this size, we're having about 1,000 people come. It really should have had a lot more police assigned to it, especially it was a high target. It's here at Bondi. And also, I mean, it was advertised as well. The advert for this event, the location was known.
How do you feel about future Jewish events that take place in Sydney and the eastern suburbs?
Yeah, well, I think obviously security will be the first question we're going to ask. Is we have to have that security, but I don't think we're going to stop. We have to send a powerful message to the haters out there that they tried to attack us, and to some extent, obviously they did, but we're not going to allow them to define us and who we are and how we're going to celebrate and how we're going to express our values and our solidarity. We're going to keep at it, if not stronger. We're going to come out stronger, and spread that message of light in outdoor locations, in indoor locations, and whatever way we can to bring people together to celebrate. We're not going to allow them to destroy our Australian way of life. So no, definitely, personally, not going to live in fear. Prouder of who I am, more visible in who I am. They're not going to defeat us. As a Jewish people, we've lived through more than 3,500 years of persecutions and pogroms and holocausts. And yes, there have been hiccups in our past, in our history, and this was a major hiccup to us personally. But we're going to get through this, and we're going to move on, and we're going to grow and rebuild. That's what we do, and we're going to be stronger than ever, and as a society as well. So I believe in Australia. I believe that we have what it takes, that Australians are good people. By and large, we're good people. We've seen that here at Bondi on the day. We've seen the hundreds of thousands flow through here. We've seen that in the days that followed. That is Australia. That is the Australia that I believe in and that I know. And now's the time to build that into a movement of proud, upstanding Australian citizens to say that we're in this together and we're going to fight it together.
One thing people like myself are worried about at this point in time is retaliation or retribution from the Jewish community. You mentioned there's a lot of anger within the Jewish community at the minute, and linked to anger, there's a risk of retaliation or retribution. I've seen in reports as well that there are, how should I put this, specially skilled volunteers that have come over from Israel to protect and support the Jewish community in Australia because they don't think that the powers that be within Australia are doing enough to protect the Jewish community. So when you hear things like that, your mind immediately goes to potential retribution. What are your thoughts on that? Is that something that is happening? Are people coming over from Israel to help protect the Jewish community?
Not that I've heard, actually. I mean, there have been a lot of volunteers that have been coming. There's one group called Zaka. These are specially trained volunteers from Israel, from across the world, that specialize in cleaning up body parts. They were the only volunteers that I've seen. I also saw actually other volunteers from Israel, specially trained in trauma therapy, to help the families of the victims and to help those who are here on the day to process and to help in their healing. They're the only volunteers that I've personally witnessed and seen on the ground. I definitely respectfully disagree, and I don't think there's any fear of retribution, because that is not the Jewish way. And it would be condemned across the Jewish community. We haven't seen Jewish lone wolves or any organizations promoting violence. Never. I mean, our message, as I mentioned, is light. Mm-hmm. The only messages that have been coming out, the universal agreed messages from Jews around the world is just to unite and to oust this darkness with light. That has been the overarching message. The only way to overcome darkness is by lighting that match and bringing light into that space. And that happens through uniting with our fellow Australians and just doing more good, and to showing them that we're not going to be overcome by that darkness and that evil. So I don't believe that there are any groups or individuals that are physically plotting to harm anyone in our community or our society. I don't believe that is the case.
To what extent does that spreading of light mean influencing government as well? Because it's all well and good getting around the community, but if this is a material risk within Australia, surely one of the things that you can do to help prevent this happening again is influencing government.
I think it has to come from everyone. I think everyone now needs to rise up and say to our politicians and our leaders that we will not accept this anymore, and we want answers as to how this happened, why it happened, why you allowed it and tolerated this hate for so long. And if it comes as a movement from the people upwards, then those answers have to flow. And I think with those answers will come a sense of accountability and responsibility that we will demand, and to ensure that this does not happen. So I think it's something that we all have to do. We all need those answers for our own safety, because thousands of people were fleeing from this beach. It's a risk to everyone in Australia. We all as Australians need to know, where is the hate? Why is there hate? And how is the hate allowed to fester and to even breed? So I think it's an Australian problem, an Australian question that we all have to lobby our governments for, to find out what are the answers to these questions that we have and demand change.
Say the government do locate a hotspot or a hotbed of this sort of activity with these people with these type of ideals. What do they need to do to those people who are potentially citizens or permanent residents of Australia?
Yeah. Well, if they're not citizens, well, they're not welcome in Australia. And if they are citizens, well, perhaps they need to go through some sort of a de-radicalisation program. Or if they are actively contemplating or putting into action violent acts or incitement, they should be arrested. And they shouldn't be out on the loose in our society, spreading hate, potentially bringing out hateful acts or radicalising others. But we need to see those actions. We actually need to see that enforced.
Do you think already within Australia we are equipped to put people through de-radicalisation programs?
Well, I think we need to quickly get onto it. If it's not being done, it has to quickly be investigated, and teams need to come in from overseas. Specialist teams, like I mentioned, the trauma teams that have been coming, and the burial teams that have been coming. We need actual teams who are specialized in de-radicalization, whether they're from the US or from Israel or anywhere else, that are properly equipped to train us and to install these programs.
Yeah, it's an interesting concept, and it's one I'd not really thought about, to be perfectly honest with you. I don't know if there's anywhere in the world that does do that successfully at this point in time. Have you heard of anywhere that would be able to sort of specialize in providing such a service?
Well, I think perhaps some of those countries that have experienced a lot of terror.
US,
Israel. From Israel, a lot of these teams have been sent around the world, often responding to tragedies, to natural disasters. Israel often sends teams. Often the first ones to show up are Israeli search and rescue teams. Sadly, they've had to specialize in these areas, and terrorism as well. So I would encourage Australia to reach out to its allies around the world and learn on their expertise, they've actively faced these situations in the past. Learn from those situations. October 7 was that situation. 1,200 people attacked and gunned down dancing at a music festival. Not dissimilar to what happened here. People coming here to celebrate a Jewish festival and to celebrate Bondi Beach, gunned down. So a very similar experience, and there's a lot of lessons to be shared and to be learned. But it needs the desire and the willpower and the action to actually reach out and to actually try and learn from those programs and implement them here.
As we've talked about, this was an attack on the Jewish community. I don't know an awful lot about the Jewish faith.
Yeah.
But I'm really interested to know, as a rabbi, is there anything that you or anyone else in the Jewish community can point to within the Jewish faith to try and make sense or understand the events that took place on Sunday, the 14th of December? I'm trying to think, in certain religions there are, I'm going to paraphrase this here, but everything happens for a reason and everything's taking place as is per God's will. I'm not saying that accurately, but you get the gist of what I'm trying to say there. Is there anything you can point to within the Jewish faith that, like I said, can just try and really make sense or help understand why events like that took place to innocent people?
Yeah. We have a similar belief that, that our divine creator, God, we're only a small glimpse in all of history. We only see a small amount, a fraction, just a bleep in the bigger picture of time. We don't have the full picture. Our creator, has that full picture. And whilst we do believe that, at the same time, we wrestle and we struggle. I think to be Jewish means to struggle. In fact, the name Yisrael or Israel, children of Israel, that was a name given to our forefather Jacob when he fought against an angel. It comes from the book of Genesis, that story. He waged that battle with that emissary of darkness all night until the morning. His thigh bone was dislocated, and he eventually overcame that that messenger. And at that point, he was given the name Israel. His name was changed from Jacob to Israel. Why? Because he struggled with God and he overcame. I think that name in the Kabbalah. It teaches that there's a lot in a name, where the parents are divinely inspired when they name their children. They're divinely inspired as to what name to give their child, because the name is linked with the soul and with almost the destiny of that person. So I think the name Israel, being a name for the Jewish people, the Israelites, has a lot in it, and obviously connected to our past, to our present, and to our future. And Israel means to question and to struggle. We are constantly struggling with the divine to understand, why do these things happen? Why are so many people so good, but yet there are also some that are bad? Why do bad things happen to good people? I mean, these are age-old questions, and I'm not proclaiming to have any answers to those questions, because I think some questions we as humans do not have the answer to. I think this perhaps is one of them. Why would a good God allow good people to be gunned down? My good friend, Rabbi Eli Schlanger, gunned down in the presence of his 2-month-old baby, who himself, the little baby who suffered shrapnel wounds, had to be in hospital, missed the funeral of his own father. Like, these are just unthinkable things that humanity is doing to each other. Perhaps a failing in humanity. Obviously a failing in humanity, but, and we question God. God gave us free will. But again, we struggle. And I think to be Jewish means that we live with a question, we live with a struggle. And perhaps because we don't know the answer, that's a calling to us to step up and to say, if I don't see, if there will be evil in the world, well, then I've got to do something about it. I can't just leave it to God, or, God does it for a reason. It's okay. I can move on now. God has his reasons. That's supposed to happen. No, we wrestle with it actively. And therefore that inspires us to action, to actually step in and join God as partners in creation. God created a world that is good. Yes, it has evil, but perhaps that's our calling, to step in, to join God in creation by perfecting the world and ousting that darkness and being those beacons of light. That is how we can replicate God, so to speak. We can become godly through that process of stepping up.
So have you been asking yourself that why question over the past 10 days, Yossi?
Yeah.
And is that sort of the answer that you've sort of come up with? I don't have a good answer right now. Honestly, what I'm feeling is step up.
I haven't actually thought about it. It's just been go, 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 literally. Just to be here for the families, to be here with the people who are gathering at the memorial and beyond, everyone in Bondi. Like, I'm just not even thinking about the philosophy of it, truth be told. It's just, and so many of us, so many thousands of people are just thinking, what can I do? What can I do? What can I do to help? And that's the beauty of humanity that I believe is our essence. In essence, I believe we are good. And I believe that essence, for so many, naturally just comes out to the full without us even thinking about it. And that's what I've literally witnessed as well. And that gives me hope in humanity. Yes, there are forces of darkness that can take over certain individuals. But yet there's so many more that are just incredible. And I'm very hopeful, and I know we have a bright future. I know it.
How have you communicated what happened with the Jewish children in the community?
Yeah.
Must be difficult to have that conversation.
Yeah, so difficult. And, on the night, I had my son's friends who are 12, 13 years of age. They were seeking refuge in our house, which is near one of the other Chanukah events, because they thought there was a shooter. We didn't know at the time, but we thought maybe there's a shooter coming on the way, or even coming to the other event. And, just hearing what the children were saying, and to see them shaking, and to hear them asking questions like, are we safe in Australia anymore? Or, I think we've all got to leave. Like, hearing 12, 13-year-olds say that. My son's good friend was shot in the arm. He was here at the event. My son visited him the following day in hospital, and just hearing his friend, my son tell me how his friend was crying to him and saying, I wish I could unsee some of the things that I saw. And some of those conversations that now we're having with our children. My daughter was on an overseas trip with actually the daughter of the murdered Rabbi Yossi Friedman, on the same bus together, and then she gets the news that her father's event was attacked, and then eventually that her father was murdered. So having conversations with our kids along these lines about the safety of our community and about what even happened and how human beings could even act like this. these are the conversations that we're all having with our kids.
So how do you answer those questions? Am I safe in Australia? Why did these men do this?
Yeah.
What have you told your son?
Honestly, it's holding the space for them to verbalize and to get it out of their chests. I think that's the first step. Getting them to even talk about it, because some of the kids aren't even talking about it, like pretending that everything's fine and just getting on with the day-to-day life. I think there's a risk in that if they
suppress trauma.
Yeah, if they don't address it. So I think it's important to have these conversations, or at least to start the conversations, because I know as a parent, like I don't have all the answers. But if I can hold the space with compassion and with love, I think that can restore that kind of faith in themselves and in each other and in us. And I think it's a process that we're going to have. These are conversations that we've started. By no means have we finished those conversations, and we're going to have to continue them. But I think, I think it definitely does give all of us strength to know that we're not in this alone and that we're all having these conversations. And I know heaps of, Bondi locals and non-Jews who are having the same conversations with their kids who are here, who are present at the beach, who heard about it. I mean, it's traumatic for all of us, even just to hear this story at all happening here at Bondi or in Australia. Like, it's traumatic for all of us. And I think these are conversations we all need to have with our kids, and to educate them. Let this be an opportunity for education for all of us, and especially for our kids, as to the dangers of hate and the importance of being the light and just being there for each other and uniting around a common message of humanity and goodness.
What can someone like me, who is non-religious, non-political, doesn't pick a side, is very neutral on a lot of things, with the exception of, I just want us all to be good humans and get along with each other, right? Like, I'm very humanitarian from that perspective.
Yeah.
What can someone like me do to support someone in the Jewish community within Australia at this time?
Yeah. So I think, firstly, perhaps three things come to mind. Number one is when you see, a Jewish sister or brother, to go up to them, not to be shy, not to think that maybe they need their space. If they do, then maybe they'll tell you, right? But just to go over to them with a smile and to share with them that you're with them, that you see them, that you're with, that give them a hug. I'm here for you. I think that's such a powerful message, that we're not alone. I think number two is to actually support the families as well. And there is a link, supportsydney.org. People can actually donate to help the families of the victims and the injured and the heroes, like Ahmed al-Ahmed and many others. Geffen, another hero that was there, tried to attack, and prevent the gunmen from doing more hate and more murder. So there's a tangible way as well to support the families. And then finally to join us and to be as one united community, as you said. It's everything else is secondary to the core humanity that we all share. I think the more that we can do to support each other, to come together for events of love and events of healing, to support one another, I think the better it is. And to, as we mentioned earlier, to lobby our governments to say, actually, we all need to feel safe. And what are the actual practical measures that you are going to enforce and enact to ensure that this thing will be a lot harder, at least, to happen again? Yeah. So I think we all need to stand together and to demand those answers, to ensure that Australia remains that loving, peaceful, accepting society that we've always known it to be.
Well said. I have a question around the gunmen themselves. So one obviously was shot and died. One was shot but survived and is stable now. My view on the whole thing is I suspect they went into it thinking it was a suicide mission. I don't think they had given where they positioned themselves, I don't think they had a get out. I think they knew they would most likely both be killed. One of them has survived.
Yeah.
My question to you is, if that gunman was sitting here in front of you today, what would you say to him?
That's a bit of an impossible question to even think about. I'd love to know why. What would drive a person to do this, perhaps? But honestly, I don't think I could even look him in the eye. I wouldn't even want to look at the face of evil. Although I would want that question answered, it may be too painful to even look at him. And I hope no one is able to ever look at him again, truth be told. The fact that he survived, I think he needs to be locked up forever, and no one should see his face. What he did that is the face of evil, and does not deserve to be out in the light, in the daylight.
Rabbi Yossi, thank you very much. I really enjoyed this conversation.
Me too, Chris.
We'll end it there, mate. Thank you
so much.
Cheers.
Thank you.
Awesome.